morning, Professor Ludwig. This is Group 1 that includes myself, Roger Gomez, Kristen Hernandez, and Janelle Hernandez, and together we'll be presenting our assigned ethical vignette that we worked on as a group. We utilized an ethical decision-making model, identified the ethical codes we felt applied to this scenario, and determined the implications. So here is our vignette. Julia is a personal friend of Kwan. Kwan is an MFT. Julia recently started therapy to help manage the loss of a recently ended long-term romantic relationship. Julia told Kwan that her individual therapist, Carla, suggested that she and Carla also see each other romantically. Julia continued to tell Kwan that she felt pressured to date Carla and that she reluctantly started dating her. Kwan explained to Julia that it was unethical for Carla to enter into a romantic relationship with her and encouraged Julia to discuss the unethical nature of their relationship with Carla. Because Kwan did not know Carla, Kwan took no further action. We determined that in order to minimize the risk of creating a dueling relationship, Kwan should first establish her role as a friend, not a therapist, before proceeding to provide Julia with feedback regarding her concern with Julia entering into a romantic relationship with Carla. Once Kwan has clearly established the role of a friend, she can then proceed to support Julia. And from here, Roger will go over the ethical codes.
So Carla has acted inappropriate and reckless with her responsibilities as a marriage and family therapist. As a therapist, we have a duty to protect Julia from harm, which is one of her therapist's main goals. We also have a duty to promote the welfare of Julia as a person, as well as assisting Julia through her relationship issues, which is the main reason why she's there for treatment in the first place. The main ethical code that that Carla has violated is code A5A. And this is sexual and romantic relationships are prohibited. This code restricts therapists from dating or being in some type of relationship with their current clients. And this is important because Julia is already in a vulnerable position, and this code helps protect and helps prevent counselors from harming their delicate clients, especially in those vulnerable positions. Carla has also violated A1A, and that's the primary responsibility, which the counselor's primary responsibility is to respect and promote the welfare of the client. Carla's actions clearly have not demonstrated that, and the best intentions for Julia were not in mind during this case. There's been an overall lack of respect, actually, for Julia on Carla's behalf, and that's not what, as a therapist, that's not what we're trying to be there for. Lastly, Carla violated code A4A, which is avoiding harm. This is important because as a counselor, we're there to avoid harming our clients. And this violation was highlighted by Carla only having her best intentions to protect, for herself in mind and not protecting Julia. Carla let the potential harm come to her patient. And not only is that excusable, but just because you have strong feelings for somebody or a strong attraction does not allow you to act on that, especially when your client is, again, in a vulnerable position like Julia was. As counselors, we have many responsibilities, but we always have the main responsibility of holding our client in a safe and protected place. This aspect, unfortunately, was not in Carla's mind while she was helping Julia. And that's also where we have the code of ethics to help guide your actions and behaviors. And unfortunately, again, Carla let that slip away from her intentions. Next, we're going to have Janelle speak about Kwan's roles in this ethical vignette.
So we see that Carla violated a lot of code of ethics, but we also want to mention that Kwan also didn't do his duty to protect Julia within that therapeutic relationship. And so we know that Kwan is not Julia's therapist. They are friends. However, as an MFT, as a therapist, it's our duty to make sure that we protect clients in a therapeutic relationship. And so C2E mentions consultations on ethical obligations. And so Kwan has the responsibility again to mention Carla pressuring Julia to be in a romantic relationship. And so the action that he could have taken is reporting Carla to the Committee of Ethics or to BBS. He could have also consulted with other therapists to see what would be an appropriate action for this therapeutic relationship that could potentially be no good. We also noticed that I2B mentions reporting ethical violations. And so we know that within this profession, to protect the integrity, to make sure that clients are safe, we want to make sure that all therapists are working to make sure they uphold all the standards within the ethical codes. And so as Kwan found out that Julia felt pressured and was in a dual relationship, again, his duty was to report that ethical violation to, again, BBS or the Committee of Professional Ethics. Next, Kristen will be talking about ethical and legal implications.
Yes, thank you. So I'll go in a little bit more depth on some of the ethical concerns that we came up with as a group. But first of all, we wanted to make sure that we address that there is also a legal issue here. So it is a misdemeanor for a licensed marriage and family therapist to engage in sexual acts with their clients. So on top of all the many ethical issues that have been identified, there is actually a legal issue here that would need to be considered when looking through this case. So looking at kind of some different ethical issues, we definitely felt that autonomy was something that was, not being respected in Julia. So she really autonomy, that right to choose personal decision. She entered into therapy to deal with the end of her relationship. And it definitely seems like Carla is not really respecting and staying in that space. And then really also with that coercion and working to get Julia into this relationship with her that Julia clearly doesn't want. So definitely looking at not respecting Julia's autonomy. Also non-maleficence, avoiding actions that cause harm. Very clearly, as was stated in the codes that were just discussed, and kind of the importance. And really, when you look at the codes, there's a lot that address this issue, really highlighting the importance of this, because there is a great deal of harm that could be caused by a therapist behaving in this manner and engaging in sexual conduct with their clients. As Roger mentioned, there's a vulnerability in the relationship. So that's even a greater risk to that client. A client comes in, they're vulnerable. Carla just went through this breakup, or Julia went through this breakup, and Carla is definitely taking advantage of that. And there's a lot of harm that could be done to Julia through this. Lack of trust, perhaps she stopped seeking therapy based on this experience. So lots of different ways that this could cause a lot of harm to Julia. Also, you could look at a couple others: fidelity, being trustworthy in the professional relationship. So I think we can all agree, and we certainly all agree, that Carla is not building trust in this relationship with Julia. It states very clearly in our vignette that, Carla is really pushing and being, coercion for Julia to be in this relationship. So definitely not building trust there. And then beneficence, working on behalf of the client. Carla seems like she's putting her interest above Julia's interest. Absolutely. I think if Carla took a moment and was really thinking about the best interest of Julia, it would not be to be talked into a relationship with her therapist that she sought help in, getting over another relationship. So absolutely not working on behalf of the client there. Also, there's just a lot of malice. So we looked at kind of the code of ethics model too, really identifying the problem, and that can be done by different people. One thing that was interesting, if you really think about it, Carla probably not be using this model. It seems like she, you know, would clearly know that this is inappropriate to talk somebody into being in a relationship with you that you're seeing in a professional way. But really, if we look at Kwon using this model, the part that kind of stuck out is when you get to that impact, there is the impact on Kwon, which, as we identified, because they don't have a therapeutic relationship, Julie and Kwon, there's perhaps not kind of either, you know, ethical or repercussions perhaps to him, but there is a greater duty to report. And that is where that impact comes in, greater impact to Julia. If, you know, Carla is behaving like this with Julia, there's a high likelihood this is not the first time, or there's other unethical behavior happening there as well that should be looked at. We thought about kind of just some actions that Kwon could do, provide Julia with resources such as therapy should never include sex, and really respecting her autonomy, trying to get her to move forward with reporting this and helping her to see that this is an inappropriate relationship and that it's not something that is typical or, you know, conducive to a therapeutic relationship. Also, Kwon should inquire more about Carla to take further action. So if, let's say, Kwon does not know Carla's last name or know kind of some of this additional information that might be needed, then Kwon could take further action, try to find out maybe a little more information so that he can move forward with reporting it. So that is, you know, the pieces that we came up with. We had a lot of great discussion around this. It can seem like a very clear-cut case, which it is, but it starts to get into this area when you look at Kwon's responsibility and kind of where the ethics apply to him. So we thank you for your time and for a great class. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.